Hantse, Jason Big Charles and Sikasun. Today I'm going to show you all about calling moose. Because right now in the fall is when the moose are at the height of their rutting season. So their mating season is going full on right now. The cow moose are calling, the bull moose are calling. So I'm going to teach you a little bit about how to call a moose. So first off, a couple things we need are the hot chicken. So we need our moose collar. This one's made of birch bark. In the last video I showed you how to make a birch bark moose collar. This one's a little bit fancier, but it's all just birch bark and a little bit of leather to put it together, just to make it look a little bit sturdier and just for looks. But this is one of the things we need. One of the other things you need when you're calling moose is you need something to make the sound of a moose antler. So, of course, you could use a moose antler, but of course with a moose antler it's awkward to carry, it's a little heavier. If you're walking through the bush, it's just hard to carry. So what happens is with all our musums and our kokums and our tsapans, they found out that one of these is much easier to use. And it makes exactly the same sound that a moose antler would make in the bush. So this is just the shoulder blade from a moose. So it's the upper shoulder blade of the front leg on a moose. So as we always keep trying to teach when we're hunting moose or when we're hunting or harvesting any animal or even plants, we need to make sure that we use everything possible, because these things are gifted to us and we need to make sure that we're using everything we possibly could. So this is what our musums and our kokums, this is what they did. They decided that this will be useful in calling moose because it sounds like an antler and it's nice and light, easy to pack around if you're calling moose. So this is what a lot of moose hunters will use now just to mimic the sound of a bull moose when we're calling, because we want to make sure that we sound like a moose. That's in every way. So even before you go out calling in the fall, you've always got to be careful, because there's not just moose out in the bush. Right now in the fall, other animals you need to be careful of. Right now the bears are getting ready to go into hibernation, so they lose their natural fear and they're just set on one thing. Their mindset is to try and find something to eat, to put on the fat that they're going to need to get through the winter. So always be mindful of everything around you. Watch for the other animals. So in the fall right now, what happens is our moose are running around trying to look for a mate, and what they use is their voice. In the bull moose, Yapil, they use their antlers. So the main thing to remember is that there are 3 different types of moose call that we're looking for. So there's the bull moose call, the cow moose call, and every so often you might hear a calf moose calling. So it's important as hunters that we get to know those 3 different calls, because that's what we're going to use to try and bring a moose to us. Any other time of the year, you're usually going to have to stalk a moose, track it to find it, because it's not going to come to you. In the fall, from September, October, right into December, you can actually make a moose come to you. So I'm going to show you how we do that. So as you're walking through the bush or quadding or driving, you want to sort of look for an area like this. So if I came up on this area, everything tells a story in the bush. So not just the tracks, everything in the trees. And one of the things I've noticed here is I've actually got some fresh scraping and freshly broken willows. So that tells me there was probably a bull moose here not too long ago. So this would be a good place to call. Because what happens with bull moose is they have their own territory that they'll walk in that same territory. So they don't just wander aimlessly. They actually have their own territories that they mark. They make scent pits. They roll in the mud and stuff in their areas, and they mark the trees by rubbing their antlers on there. Now this serves two purposes. So earlier in the rutting season, what happens is their velvet will start to dry and start to come off. So the moose will actually come and rub on the trees to get all of the velvet off of their antlers so that they look like this. In fact, from rubbing on the willows and everything, and just from the leftover velvet they had, right now these would actually be more of a brownish color, so brownish reddish color. This one has been sitting for a while, so it's not brownish or reddish anymore. It's been sitting in the sun for a while. But they'll actually come and they'll try and rub off all of that velvet, leftover velvet. As well, they'll also be trying to display for other moose. So just to mark their territory and to make some noise, because they make a lot of noise when they're busting and scraping on the willows, and then sometimes they'll even bang on the trees. So you want to listen for that. Look for these areas where you can see where something has been rubbing on the trees, because in the fall it's more than likely been a bull moose. So I choose a spot like this to start my calling. So what I do, first of all, when I get to the bush, is the first call that I do is a bull moose call. Especially at an area like this, I know there's a bull in the area. I know it's fresh because this is still green, freshly rubbed. So I try a bull call, because what's going to happen if I do a bull call, then that bull moose that made this is going to hear that. And it's going to get him angry, because he's going to think, hey, there's another bull in my territory. I'm going to go see what's going on. Maybe that bull has a cow with him. I'm going to go try and steal his cow from him. So the bull will come back to this area if I try calling here. So with the bull moose call, it's just one quick grunt. Not just one short grunt, but you do that grunt maybe 5 to 7 times when you're calling, and you try and call in different directions, because I have no idea where this bull moose is. Might be over here, he might be over here. So when I'm calling, my first call, I want to call in all the directions, just to get that sound traveling out there. Because remember, the sound, if I'm aiming over here, all of my sound is going to go that way. Anything up here is not really going to hear it that well, and it might not even pick up on it, so I wouldn't get that bull moose coming in from that direction. So I've got to be mindful of that as well. So with the bull moose, and a lot of people that I've taken out hunting who have heard a moose for the first time, they often mistake the bull moose call for a dog barking. Because when you're way out in the bush, it's with the echoes and everything, it does sort of sound like a dog bark. So when I'm calling, I'm always calling from my stomach. Not from my voice, but from my stomach. Almost like somebody came up and gave you a little punch in the stomach. That's pushing that air out quickly. Oh, oh. Not from up here. Because if you call from up here, you're not getting that deep sound. Remember, a moose is huge, and that's a lot of deep sounds coming out of him. So we got to try and mimic that. So if I were calling a bull moose, first thing I'd do is I'd get to my spot and I'd make my bull call in all different directions. So that is a bull moose call. As soon as I finish that call, what I'd do is I'd sit very quietly and I'd listen. Sometimes I'd listen for maybe 15, 20 minutes, maybe even a half hour, just to hear if I'm going to get an answer back. Now you won't always get a moose calling back. You sometimes just might hear a stick break, or you might hear antlers coming on the trees. In fact, more times than not, you'd probably hear the antlers coming through the bush before you'll hear an animal call. And it's just sounds like a little bit swishing. When you're away off in the bush and you hear that sound, it just sounds like something swishing through the willows. So you hear that sort of sound. Just as they're walking by the willows, they sort of brush on them, and you can hear that. Because a bull moose won't always call back immediately. Sometimes they'll just come check it out. But the first thing the bull that's coming to you tries to do is it tries to go downwind from you. So if the wind were blowing this way and I heard a moose over here, that moose would actually circle way around and try to come downwind of me, just so it could try and smell me to see if I'm really a moose, or if there's a cow in the area, or if the bull has marked out that area. But they'll try and come downwind of you, and that's the way they'll come in. So you've got to be careful with your scent as well. Be mindful of the wind. Be mindful of where you are. So if I was the area I'm at right now, it's a little bit bushy here, and the wind is kind of blowing that way. So I'd be very careful. If I heard anything coming up there, I might want to stay low so my scent travels low to the ground. Or if there is a bit of a breeze, I might bring one of the scent sticks that they sell in the hardware store. You can actually buy moose scent sticks, and you just light them and you let them smoke, and they spread the scent of a moose around. But with our hochums and our musums, they weren't able to do that. So what they actually did is in the fall or in the summer, when they'd harvest the dry cow, what they do is they take the urine from the cow, so the pee from the cow, and they collect it in a bottle, and they take that with them in the fall, and they sort of spill it around, put some on the trees, just to get that scent there, so it kills out our human scent, and it puts the scent of a cow moose around. I still know a lot of hunters that still do that. They'll pack a bottle of urine from a cow, and they'll use that when they're out calling moose. So I've made my initial calls for a bull. Now the first call you want to do is a bull call, because like I said, if there's a cow in the area, she's going to come in. By chance, she might happen to be a dry cow, but they'll still come to a call. But either way, if a cow hears a bull call, she'll come in. If a bull hears a bull call, he'll come in. So the bull call is the best call, and in fact, the bull call is probably the call that you'd use most of the time. So I'd listen 15 minutes, maybe half an hour, just carefully listening for any sound of a stick breaking or antlers going on the bush, or even a call back. Now if I get a call back immediately, that tells me that either a bull moose is angry and he's coming to check out his territory, or it's a bull coming in from somewhere else who heard me call, and he's coming to check if I have a cow with me, or just coming in to try and claim the territory and fight me for my territory. So if I hear a bull call, I might want to try a bull call again. But this time, if I've heard a bull call and I'm going to call back to that bull, I want to make sure that I have my antler ready, because I'm going to make another bull call, but I'm going to make noise with my antlers, just to really try and convince that bull that it's actually a bull here. And if a bull were to hear the sound of an antler, it's going to get him really angry. He's going to lose his caution, and he's going to come rushing in for a fight, so he'll come in quickly. So if I've heard a bull call, take my Tahatchagan, and I'm going to make another bull call. So say I hear a bull coming in from this direction. I'm not going to call to that bull in that direction because he's already heard me. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to turn away and call to this direction, because what that's going to do is it's going to confuse that bull a little. He's going to know I'm in this general direction. If I call this way, he's going to be able to pinpoint me where I'm at, and he might even hear that that moose doesn't quite sound like a moose. So I'm going to try and confuse him, convince him that I'm still a bull, so I'll call the opposite direction from him. Maybe make 3 calls, and I'm going to make noise with my antler. Once I've done that, again, I just listen carefully. If he doesn't call back immediately, I'd still listen carefully for maybe 15-20 minutes if needed. But usually when you have a bull call and you call and you make noise, antler sounds, that bull will call back immediately. If he keeps calling, I won't call again unless he stops calling. So if he starts calling and he's coming in, I'm just going to let him come in and wait for him. But if he stops somewhere and I don't hear any noise at all, that means he's sort of unsure where this other bull is, or is unsure if it's really a bull. So you're going to have to convince him. So if I've waited 15 minutes and he hasn't called back, I do it again. Turn away, call like a bull, scrape my antler on the willows again to make noise, and then I'd listen. Sometimes you might have to do that 2 or 3 times to get that bull moving again. But remember, once he does start moving and calling, don't make a sound, just sit and wait, and hopefully he comes right out to you. Only call if he stopped calling and stopped making noise. What's nice about the fall right now is all the leaves are off, so you can hear for a long ways. You can hear really good, especially when it's calm out. So it's mainly listening, and when he comes close, watching. So if he was coming and then all of a sudden he stopped, and I call again like a bull, scrape my antler, and he doesn't answer, then that means he's kind of lost interest or something's making him a little scared. That's when I'd use one of my other calls. So that's when I'd sort of get him going again, and I'd maybe use a cow call. Now with a cow call is one long call followed by 2 or 3 still long calls, but not quite as long as the first one. So it's a long drawn out call. That's how the cow calls. So I'll just show you what a cow call sounds like. So that would be a cow call. So if that bull moose had stopped there, and after 2 or 3 tries with the bull call he didn't come, I'd try a cow call. Usually immediately once you make a cow call, that bull is going to think, hey, there's a cow up there. I don't care if that bull moose sounds a little funny or might even catch your scent. He's going to suddenly throw his caution away again, and he's going to start coming because he's thinking, hey, there's a cow up there. I want that cow. That's what I'm looking for right now. So he'll start calling himself, and he'll start coming towards you again. Now hopefully he comes all the way in just hearing that cow call, because once a bull moose hears a bull call with a cow call there, he's going to come in ready to fight, because he wants to steal that cow away. So he's going to throw all his caution away, and he's going to come in pretty quickly. That's when you'll hear his antlers hitting on the trees. You'll hear him calling. Sometimes when the bull moose is coming in, as they're walking, they're calling. But it's a little bit quieter call. You can tell when a bull moose is angry, because he's not calling like that's a mating call. So remember, the bull moose is coming in. He's got his antlers and his face down, and he's moving his antlers around, and he makes that little call that sounds almost like a frog. Just a quiet call, but he'll call steady as he's walking. So he'd be going, and he'll keep calling like that as he's walking. But just quiet. Sometimes you can barely hear him. But if he's calling like that, that means that he's going to be coming in, because he's got it in his mind now that there's a bull and a cow there. So he's just going to keep walking in with his swinging his antlers. You can hear his antlers hitting, and he'll be making that call the whole while he's walking. So that's what they'll often do. So that's when our Hookums and Musums would say that they sound almost like a frog, because when you're in the bush and you hear it, it actually does just sound like a frog calling like that. So hopefully your moose, all you'd have to do is watch him when he starts doing that, and as he's coming, you just watch for where he's going to pop out, and you'll get your bull moose. Now there are times when it's hard to get a moose to call back to you. So if you were calling and you heard either a cow call or a bull call, and they just seem to be staying where they are, like you can hear him calling off in a distance, but he's not really coming, there is one other thing you can do, and that's the third call, our calf call. Now, of course, our calves aren't running around trying to look for a mate, but what happens is in the fall is if a bull moose comes upon a cow with a calf, the bull will actually chase that calf away. And it's this sound that you need to listen for, because if you hear a calf calling, that means there's a bull and a cow there, and that bull is chasing that calf away. And sometimes that bull will chase that calf for miles and miles to make sure it doesn't come back to the cow. Now what does the cow do while the bull is trying to chase the calf away? Most people, especially with us, we'd think, oh, if somebody's chasing my kid away, I'm going to go defend them and try and protect them. But the cow moose actually doesn't do this, because in the fall, cow moose actually wants its calf to leave if it's ready to have another baby. So it'll just stand there in one spot while the bull is chasing the calf away. So of course the calf is only calling because he's running, and he's making those running sounds as he's calling. So as he's calling, you need to try and mimic that running sound. And it's a very distinctive sound. If you've heard a calf calling, you know it's a calf, because it's a little higher pitch, but biggest thing is you could hear that running sound. And this is how it would sound. So the calf would be calling like that as the bull is chasing it. So if you're walking in the bush and you happen to hear that, then it's probably a good idea for you to stop, because there's a bull, a cow, and a calf not too far from you. Now, what you could do is wait to hear what's going on and carefully sneak up there and hopefully find the bull. But if not, you might be able to actually call that bull towards you, because you know there's a bull there, you know there's a cow there. So if you start doing your bull calls, that bull is actually going to stop chasing that calf, and it's going to come look for the other bull. Because remember, the bulls they fight fiercely over the cows. So those are the three main calls you need to make sure you know how to do, and you know how to listen for them and how to recognize them. So of course, call number one, the call you use mostly, is the bull call. Call number 2 you need to remember is the cow call. Loud, long call. And lastly, call number 3, the calf call. So those are the 3 calls. Now remember, you'll mostly be using the bull call and using your antler to try and bring in any of those moose. Because if a cow is ready to have a baby and it hears a bull call, that cow will probably start calling, or it'll just come walking in. Sometimes the cows will come in without calling, they'll just come walking in. I know we're mostly shooting bulls. In fact, almost 99% of the time we should be shooting the bulls and leaving the cows alone, because they're the ones who keep having the calves and they're the givers of life. So we leave the cows alone, go after the bulls. But if you hear a cow calling to you, that's going to help you, because if that cow is calling, then it's also going to have this cow scent with it, and it's going to be drawing in bulls for you. And sometimes maybe that cow will have a bull with it, and it'll bring that bull to you. So remember these tips when you go out calling moose, and hopefully you'll have some luck hearing some moose. Simaga.